Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking some time out of your day to join us in our second episode of our case study series with Onshape. So my name is Ryan Pipperud. I'm one of our EAC Onshape reps here, and I'm excited to take you all through a customer case study today talking about the company FHE, a leading designer and manufacturer of pressure control equipment for the oil and gas industry. And joining me in our case study today is Bill Schlund. And Bill is one of our technical account managers here at EAC who's well versed in Onshape. And as we talk through some of the different challenges FHE was facing in their design environment, Bill will be illustrating how FHE overcame each challenge utilizing Onshape's cloud-based capabilities. Also, I wanted to mention there that if there's any questions during or at the end, please enter those into the chat box and we would be more than happy to address those at the end of today's case study session. So with that said, let's dive into the case study and understand FHE's current state before switching to Onshape. So just to provide a quick summary of where they were at, FHE wanted to come up with an alternative, more efficient and safer method for the oil and gas workers when it comes to hydraulic fracturing, otherwise known as fracking. And according to OSHA, 3 out of every 5 fatalities in the oil and gas industry are the result of, quote, struck by, caught in, and caught between hazards, and including being hit by moving vehicles, falling equipment, and high pressure valves. So really that sparked a new design idea, which led to the development of their newest piece of equipment called the Frac Lock, which is a much safer and efficient wellhead connector that a worker can operate, which is remote controlled, where the wellhead remains fixed in its location to allow their guys to make the connection needed and to avoid injuries or even fatalities. And this innovation improved operation time and made a huge impact on productivity. However, though, before the Frac Lock design phase started, their senior mechanical designer, Matthew Kibler, wanted to find a better way to manage their data management. Their current PDM workflows had proven to be cumbersome and problematic. It caused engineers who had files checked out locking other engineers out who needed access to the same file. That of course led to things like other engineers making copies. FHE wanted to eliminate, their project delays they were experiencing with their file-based PDM system that required serial workflows. Their product development team was looking for a CAD data management solution that would allow multiple engineers to access and work on the design at the same time, while still providing real-time version control. So to remedy this, they found Onshape, a modern-day SaaS-based product development platform that would allow them to deliver anytime, anywhere access to their design data for FHE's globally dispersed team. So I now want to pass this over to my colleague, Bill, where he can illustrate this in a little bit greater detail. So Bill, can you show our viewers here today how FHE's engineers were able to work on the Frac Lock design simultaneously, where every engineering member and manufacturing partner that they worked with always had the latest design version?
Yeah, good point, Ryan. And we're not going to be doing the oil and gas utility today. I'm going to be working in a different utility. We're going to use the electrical substation here. So same idea though. What we're going to be doing is talking about how people can access the same data at the same time. I'm going to take as you can see here, our electrical substation here. And I've shared this with some other people. And here's another user right here who can as well see the exact same model at the exact same time that I am. One of the things that we can do in communicating, because we're not always co-located, is that I can come in, and if I come in and zoom in on a particular area, let's come over here, you can see that the user sees that as well. So I'm spinning it around. It spins around on his screen as well. So, and he's still independent, right? To see and be able to manipulate things the way that he might want to do that. One of the other things that we can do is, since we're working on the same design here, I'm going to go over here and let's kind of orient our designs a little bit. We can take a look at here and over on my screen. Now the person I'm sharing it with is another user in this particular project. And what I'm going to do is make some changes to our design. I'm just going to go and pick on a component here, and we'll drag it over. We want to center it between these two towers that we see here. As soon as I let go, you'll notice that it has moved over here for him as well. So real-time updating all the time of what's happening. So that's one of the big advantages, Ryan, for working simultaneously. We're working on the same data at the same time. We're seeing each other's updates at the same time. And it makes collaboration and the development of products much quicker.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Great illustration there. You can definitely see how it expedited and streamlined their design cycles and project lead times by that collaboration that Onshape provides. I was wondering too, Bill, if you could also show us how FHE was able to set up and structure their Onshape account into different folders for not only the internal team members there, but also these outside vendors that they worked with. Sounds like there's a lot of them. Could you show the setup of how that works?
Sure, and again, great opportunity to show some capabilities here in Onshape. This is my homepage. When people log in, they get to see things they've been working on recently, different folders that were shared with them, but also different projects that they were doing. So under typical development, we might want to create a project that does that. So I've done that here. I've created this substation project. And let's take a look at how we go about setting that up. We go and take a look here. We can see, obviously I give it a name and a description. We can set up what kind of permission schemes that we want, and then I can start inviting different people to this project. So I'm starting to build a team of people and different disciplines to kind of help us develop this product. Now here, I can see that, I was the original developer of this, but then I've invited a person here and then a couple different teams. So I can invite groups of people. I invited a manager's team. They have view capabilities. And then I invited just the regular design team. Again, they'll have edit capabilities to be able to change geometry, add geometry, and things like that. So now that we have people lined up to work on the project, we can start to think about the structure of that project as you asked for. So if we take a look at our project, I can kind of open this up. We can see I've created a series of folders here. One of the things with projects too, if you got a particular project that is similar to other ones, we can duplicate that or basically kind of clone it so we have the same kind of setup, the same people working on it, the same different folder structure and things like that. You notice I've broken this up into several different areas. We go and take a look at our main design. We could look at some external PDFs that we might have got from some vendors for some information that we might need to leverage. We can have some results that we have here, some FEA results that we ran on different components. And then finally, we can go in and talk about maybe the 3D models that we were working with here. So we'll say, let's look at our 3D models, and we can see that we have the main assembly, some different sub-assemblies and things like that. So as these projects grow and as we have more and more information, one of the things that we might want to do is start to be able to organize them, not just structurally in folders, but be able to query for them on certain aspects. So something that Onshape does is it allows the concept of what we call labels. And a label is just an attribute that we can apply to a drawing, to a part, to an assembly. And what it allows us to do is kind of group those all together by what label they are tagged with. And again, you could have multiple labels on different things because they could belong to different projects or different ways of classifying things. But here, if I say, let's look at everything that's been labeled for our substation, we can see all the components, all the drawings, everything that's involved in the substation so far, very easily listed here by just leveraging this labels capability inside of Onshape. So basically what we're seeing is that it's very easy for us to kind of build a structure and kind of invite groups of people. Now, there's a more ad hoc variation that we can do as well. So I'm going to kind of make my screen a little bit bigger here. One of the things that we can do, here we'll see one of the sub-assemblies. This is a big circuit breaker. It's kind of called a octopus circuit breaker. But what we're going to do here is we want to do on a more ad hoc level, invite people in particular to share in this particular design. So this is a sub-assembly of the larger substation we saw before. I'm just going to use, there's a share button up here. I'm going to say, let's invite different people. Again, I can invite teams of people. In this case, I'm going to invite an individual. And Ryan, I'll invite you. So now you're invited. You'll be getting an email and inviting you to this design that we're working on. You notice that you have edit rights on this. So I'm going to allow you to change some things. Another thing we can do is we can say, let's invite a guest. And let's see. In this particular case, we're inviting somebody. It could be a vendor. It doesn't necessarily have to be someone inside our company, but it is somebody who will be using a license, basically a light license. But I don't want him to copy anything, and I don't want him to export anything. I'm just going to say, let's share that. So now that gets shared to this user. And so more on an ad hoc level, I can bring people into the design as well if they weren't included in the original setup of the project. So I guess I'll throw it back to you for now.
Excellent. Thank you, Bill. That's very interesting how they were able to set that up. And, reading the case study, it just talked about how it led to tremendous savings for FHE on the shop floor, being able to, work in real-time information with all internal and external parties. And I took a quote too from Matthew Kibler, the senior mechanical engineer I mentioned earlier. He says, quote, "Making sure our vendors have the most up-to-date drawings provides immediate savings," he says. Quote, "Anytime we get a manufacturing mistake, it could cost several thousands of dollars. Making sure the vendors are on the latest revisions puts the onus on them and not on the purchasing agent. I don't even know how to begin to put an exact dollar amount on it, but the clarity that Onshape gives us in our communications with vendors is invaluable." So moving on to another focus that FHE had, as we learned more about them and their team and the product development setup, they have 11 full-time 11 full-time Onshape users and 135 light users. So they needed to find a cost-effective way to share up-to-date CAD data with non-CAD users, such as the dozens of vendors that they worked with. They found that Onshape's enterprise plan fit exactly what they needed, which allowed their non-CAD users access to critical design data. It saved the non-CAD user the hassle of having to go bug an engineer and ask them to get them and retrieve that data. Instead, that information could be shared with them in the appropriate folder with the respective permissions and access rights to obtain the information they needed. So with that, I wanted to bounce it back to Bill here. And Bill, could you show us how FHE leveraged the light user capabilities to ensure that they were sharing the latest design data with all of their non-CAD users and external stakeholders?
Okay, great point. So right at the end there, I did invite a light user, as you can see, and he's also categorized as a guest. If I were to go in and change your properties and say that you can only view things, and we can say update that, now you can view. So what's the difference between what your capabilities are and what this light user can do? Since you're part of our company, you can access other things that are shared with all the users. So that might be drawing templates or library parts or things that everybody needs access to. But a light user can only see things that I share with him or that we share with him. So he can't browse around and look at anything else. So we've created this light user. Let's take a look at what happens to him. I'm going to call him up. You notice that he gets an email right here and it says, "Bill has invited you to share this document." He can select on it and you can see the document that I'm sharing with him, which is this one, right? Because we shared that with him. Let's go over and refresh this. He's going to log in. Let's say and what we're going to see is he's going to have the exact same access as we saw before. You can see that here. He can click on this octopus design. And you notice his menus are a little bit different than mine. We can take a look at it over here. His menus are just viewing menus. So you can do things like cross sections and you can pull parts apart and zoom in and zoom out and measure, things like that. But as far as being able to change geometry, as I said before, the light user can't change anything. He can only view things. And one of the nice things that he can do, in this particular case, our user's taking a look at this big circuit breaker here. He's going to come in and make a comment. He's going to say, maybe we need to angle the top of the cabinet. And in fact, he's going to tag that. to kind of highlight that. And we're going to say, let's add that. So that text has been sent now to everybody. And since he addressed it to everybody, it's to everybody here in the design. So if I look under here, we can see it's tagged on my design and everybody else's as well. And they can see this, need to angle this. So this would be a good opportunity to work with one of the other users to ask him to do that. So I'm going to take our thing here and I'm going to say, let's create a task. And I'm going to direct this to somebody. So the other person that I was sharing with before was Nick when we were collaborating earlier today. So I'm going to say, Nick, can you angle the top? And to maybe kind of explain a little bit better, you'll see the little markup here. But maybe I'll say, let's go and mark that up. I'm just going to go in real easily and say, let's just draw a line, maybe representing the angle that we want it at, and kind of highlight that. And then maybe, I don't know, just kind of cross this part out. So I'm going to add that as a markup, and I'm sending it directly to Nick. Now, what the light user did is he sent out a general text, a general comment, and everybody can see that. But this is only going to be able to be seen by Nick. We can also assign this as a task to Nick so that this is on his to-do list of things to do. And when he's finished with it, he can check it off, and we can mark and notice that we've got certain jobs finished. So I'm going to say, let's include that. So now let's take a look at what Nick does. He gets comment over here. Now let's go to the octopus, and you can see that he's been given the markup that I've sent. So Nick can kind of zoom in on this. He can open it up and start to work with this particular design. So let's be Nick for a little bit. He needs to make a change here. So he can just easily come in and say, let's just change this electrical box. And we just want to change maybe kind of the draft on it. Or let's just change the sketch. Kind of make this a smaller number, real simple to do. We can update that. We can see that everything has been updated here. Go back to our assembly. Door still works. Everything's good. Going back to our design, you notice that it's updated on my window because we're working on the same part at the same time. So this updates everywhere. In fact, now that Nick has done this, he could say, let's make a new version. So something we haven't talked about at all is versioning. And he could say, let's make this version 4 and maybe version 4, and we could call it slanted. And basically put in a description. But anytime there's something significant done to a product or a project, we can save that as a version. And again, the whole history of everything that's been done on this particular component is right here. So we can see there's already a couple of versions. Here's the one that Nick just created, and that's version 4. Now, something interesting about this, I'm going to close down our thing here. If we go back to our substation and kind of open this up, you notice that substation is still showing the older version here. If I go over here and take a look, you notice that there's next to every one of these octopus, there's a little symbol and it says there's a newer version that can be updated with this. So one of the nice things about this is that we can go in and make updates. So if something changes, it doesn't automatically update. We control what we want to have update, what version. We saw that there are 4 different versions here. What version do I want to leverage? In this case, I'm just going to say, let's update everything to the latest version. And so all the different circuit will be updated here all together. So the nice thing about it is that we have absolute control, not only of the people that are using this, but when things get updated and who updates them. And then, what kind of things that we see after that. So we can see we have a slanted view here. So with that, Ryan, I think we'll throw it back to you.
Yeah, I was going to say too, Bill, one other thing, would you be able to show the link share capability as well?
Yeah, good point. So that's something we haven't used yet. You notice that we invited a number of people here to the project, but another thing that we can do, and again, one was a vendor, but he was actually using one of our license, right? That was the light user that asked us to put a slanted top on there. One of the things that I'm going to do is we go over here, I could say, let's do link sharing. And by me doing that, anybody that I turn on link sharing on will get to share this design. So they don't have to be members of our company. In fact, they don't certainly need Onshape. They aren't going to use a license. They don't need a plugin. All they have to do is hit this link and it will bring them into a view-only session of this without having to log in, without having to do anything other than click on this particular link. So link sharing is incredibly powerful and allowing people to see data without being, maybe part of the company or without being any type of logins or downloads or anything like that, right? We're just giving them access. And this could be also people inside our company, maybe shop floor. We just want to give them access. So we would use this link sharing capability to do something like that.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Bill. Yeah, I mean, as you can see, compared to traditional CAD, no longer are you dealing with passing files back and forth. The communication and collaboration between internal department members and outside stakeholders is clearly streamlined, knowing that you're always looking at the latest design information, and just being able to, like he showed here, link share, and that's always going to be updated anytime they click that link today or 4 weeks from now, they'll see any changes that have been made. So great stuff there, Bill. Now, also another piece I wanted to get into was kind of the security side of IP and what FHE was looking for. And in today's age, collaborating with outside vendors requires a significant amount of trust. And you may have vendors you've worked with for years, and you know that they're trustworthy. You can count on them and rely on them. But what happens when you bring on a new vendor that you haven't ever worked with before? Are you willing to put that same trust in them and that they won't steal your IP? With file-based CAD, there comes a lot of security risks and breaches that can take place because of the number of copies floating around out there, the sending of USB sticks of data via mail, even the lack of permissions and access rights as to who can see what and do what with your IP. Ultimately, there's really no way to track or limit who ultimately receives those files. So with that, I want Bill, if you could show us, how FHE was able to be at ease more, knowing that they were securely sharing their design data with their vendors, and that it wasn't wandering off into the abyss.
Yeah, and a lot of people are worried, especially if it's in the cloud. Who can get access to it? What can they do when they get it? So let's take a look at this. So I touched on this a little bit earlier when I was sharing this. I shared this with you. I changed you to be a viewing person, and I actually like to tie things down. So I'm not going to allow you to copy or export anything. The only thing you can do is look at it and comment. And this light user here, even though it says edit, he can't edit anything. He can only view things. And again, if I look at his properties, we could take a look at, you'll notice that he can only comment on things as well. He can't link it to anything else. He can't reuse my data in another Onshape session. He can't export it. He can't share it with anybody. He can't make a copy of it, and he certainly can't delete it. So all these types of things really allow us to dial down at a very minute level exactly what people can do. When I set up this project earlier, I assigned certain properties or capabilities to all the users I invited as well. Here, I've been doing it kind of on the fly. But when I set up my project, I want the engineers to be able to have maybe full capabilities, right? I want them to be able to export things if they need, link them to other things, make copies, and all of that. But in Onshape world, it's very easy to get down to the exact capabilities of any particular user so that we don't have to worry about our IP, our data going anywhere.
Perfect. Yeah, and Bill, I was going to say too, let's just say for an example, FHE was working with a specific vendor, but that project had ended with them, or that business relationship ended. Can you show our viewers how you can easily just cut them off from the design process? knowing that they cannot get access to that information anymore.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, just going back to our share here, you'll notice that we can edit things. Now, remember I shared it with this light user, right? He was someone who was a vendor, he's outside of our company, and he started giving us suggestions on, modifying the cabinet top. But if we don't no longer need his input, it's as simple as just hitting the X next to his name, and he no longer exists. He no longer has access to anything. If he tries to pick on anything, it just goes back to his regular browser. I mean, there's no Onshape access at all for him anymore. So it's very easy for us to, as you saw before, include people, and then it's even easier to exclude them once they have been invited.
Perfect. Thank you, Bill. Well, another piece too I'd like to touch on here is if you could also show how FHE was able to monitor their user activity and get more visibility and granularity into their, their data and for each of their projects.
Yeah, so we saw the granularity as far as controlling the rights of certain things that people can do or can't do. Another thing we're going to do here is Onshape knows everything that happens with our design, who logs in, who does what with what. So I'm going to go over here and let's take a look at analytics. So here I ran a report on our project, and right now it's actually showing where the project is. So this is where I live, but right now it's saying there have been, and I dialed this down. I'm not allowing anyone to copy anything or export anything. So we can see 0 things have been copied, 0 documents have been copied, nothing's been exported, and nobody has tried to export anything. But look at 2 people have logged in and have failed. And one of them was me. All I have to do is click on this and it'll say one was me because I fat fingered my password and it didn't let me in, so I had to log in again. And the same was with the new user. I had logged him in earlier once before and made a mistake on his password. And so it lets us know. And again, if I click on this, it'll say these are the 2 users, and this is when they had logged into this. Now, another thing that we can look at is from the standpoint of projects. So I'm going to go over here and say, let's look at a project list. So this is going to list out all the projects in our company right now that we've worked with. And I'm going to say, here's our substation that we've been working with. And it says, when it was started and modeled by, and there's even like how many hours of work has been on there. But I can select on it in particular. And I'll say, let's look at the dashboard for this project. So this is going to give me an idea of how much time has been spent on this. And there's been 6 things that have been imported. Some of those were those PDFs that we saw earlier. These are the different people that have been working on it recently. And we can say, over what period of time. This particular case, we're looking, I think, in the last 15 days or last 30 days. Here we can see nothing has been exported. 6 things have been created. And then we have a breakdown of each individual user and the things, how much time they've spent on which days and what things they did. So different colors represent whether you're working in an assembly, working in a drawing, or working on just individual part designs or things like that. And then down below, we can see the other individual users here and how much time was spent on each part of the project. So everything is broken down very easily. And then here we can see another graph down here, again, with kind of a bar chart showing that on the last few days here, how much work has been done in assemblies, how much work has been done in drawings, and then how much work has been done just generating parts. So we can get a breakdown of that just over the last few days as well. So as you can see, Onshape keeps absolute track of everything that's done, who's done it and when. And we can even tell if somebody has accessed a particular part or an assembly or not. If we're asking someone to put in a bid on something and they throw in a number, I can go and check and see if they've ever really looked at the information that we shared with them. Another thing, if we kind of think about this more on a global level, so we're looking at it from the Onshape world in just users and designs, but I wanted to share with you, if we step back a little bit, and what else does Onshape do for you as far as security? So I just have a couple of slides here that I wanted to touch on, but the first one is that all data is encrypted that flows between the servers that are the Amazon Web Servers and the user who's using that. Nothing is brought onto the disk at all, but while it's going through the internet, it's encrypted. And as well as it's also encrypted on those Amazon Web Services disks. So everything is encrypted there. There's strict control over network traffic. User documentation activity is monitored, as we just saw. We can see which things were activated or used and for how long. And then there's also some automated systems to react to any type of threats. Another thing that's kind of interesting too, and it's more along, not necessarily security, but making you feel secure with your data. And that's really that Onshape backs up all your data every 4 hours. It also restores and validates that backed up data every 3 weeks. So if you think of anybody who's been backing up their data, think about you and your company. How often do you check that to make sure that you can call it back up after it's been backed up? Most people don't. They don't until they absolutely have to. You know, there's been some kind of disastrous outcome, and now they have to go back to their backups, and hopefully they work. Onshape checks that every 3 weeks to make sure that you can. And finally, all your data is replicated on 3 different servers at all times. So if one server were to go down, you got 2 other ones that are running. And what that means is you never, ever lose your work. So I think with that, Ryan, we've covered pretty well the type of security that Onshape will give users to protect their IP.
Yes, agreed, Bill. Thank you. That was a good, thorough overview of Onshape's security measures that it takes, the rigorous testing methods it goes through to protect customers' IP. And as you can see, you can really get a good granular view and better visibility, especially for engineering leaders, as to where a project stands. And it's just nice having that, knowing exactly where things are throughout your different projects as you work through your workflows there. But thank you, Bill, for the excellent illustration of how FHE benefited from switching to Onshape and the value that they received here. And I just wanted to read you one last quote from FHE's Senior Mechanical Design Engineer, Matthew Kibler again. Quote, Onshape is our primary design tool, our primary share tool, and it will continue to help us expand our vendor communications, he says. Quote, I'm a huge fanboy of Onshape. I was just at a college recruiting fair and showing graduates how you can pull up CAD models and edit them on your phone. Onshape really is the next generation of what CAD can and will be, and is leading the way for what collaborative design software looks like, end quote. But wanted to say, thank you for everyone. That's all we have for you this afternoon. I really hope, you enjoyed listening to this episode. You got a lot of value out of it. And at the very least, had a chance to learn something new about Onshape or just product design in general. I hope today's Onshape case study has, given you some good ideas on ways to continuously improve processes around data management, design collaboration, and optimize workflows.